Now we will have one round of question and answer session. Then we'll open up, we'll provide the opportunity to our audience to interact with the speakers. So I think my first question is to Ms. String Denker. So before that, one question to our audience. How many of you here follows String Denker's Getaway on Instagram or Facebook? Can you please raise your hands? Thank you, La. So as you can see, you are a very popular social media influencer in our country. And I just checked before we came here, La. So she has 53.4K followers on Instagram alone, La. So with that significant following, and also among young people, I think especially it's young people who follows you on Instagram and Facebook, La. So how do you use this platform to advocate about climate change, La? And particularly because it's the youth who are following you the most, how do you target our youth in, in advocating about climate change, using your platform?
Wow. All right, thank you, Leki, and if you all are following me, thank you so much for your support. I'm here all because of you all. I would still be doing what I'm doing now, but it would be different without the support that I would be receiving without you all. With or without you all. But anyways, coming back to this question, I don't have massive social media follower. However, I feel like it's pretty good for the Bhutanese audience. Thank you, Ladasho. So what I mean, the activities that I do is not really do hardcore climate stories where you get bored of. It's like, one time, for instance, UNDP, it was regional director Amkani Vignaraja. She came here and UN, and we were just discussing UNDP, and we were just discussing what can we do different to engage youths to listen to conversation about EV. And then I was like, let's just get into the EV, take a spin around the town, and interview inside the car. Just like James Corden, who's very popular with carpool karaoke. So in that sense, when we create content which suits the taste of young people, I think in that way, the message gets way faster. I mean, it reaches the audience way faster. So as a content creator with social media followings, what I try to do is come up with the content which will bring the youth's interest, youth's attention, unlike, sorry if there's mainstream media, but unlike boring mainstream media tactics. Yeah, so it's basically through content creation, through documentaries, through writing blog posts. So I do this all, I write, I do documentaries, I do vlogging, and all of this are being posted on social media platform. So that's why every time I go to schools, I always, I try to advocate social media literacy, telling them you can do a lot on social media. If you know, I'm not saying I'm wise, but if you really know how to use resources wisely, there's every chances that you get to actually find the right people, right channel, at right time, at right moment, and just get your message across the globe or even within the kingdom. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I get carried away by my own answers, so...
I think you definitely answered. It's not just my questions. I think everyone had that question, so I think you definitely answered our question.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I would like to ask my next question to our youngest panelist here before he gets restless. So yeah, Dradul, I think most of us have already seen his videos on social medias like Facebook. I think at your age, what we preferred was to play games and just relax. But you are here talking about climate change, being an influencer, advocating on climate change. So, Dradul, if you could trace it back to one defining moment or experience in your life, what inspired you to take up this path, to be an influencer, to talk about climate change and advocate about climate change?
Okay, so the answer is like I mentioned before, I told that I moved to Gelbojing, which is the eastern part of Bhutan, and like I said, it was terribly hot, and then Yeah, this is one defining moment that inspired me, but this isn't all of it. So basically, what happened is when I was there, I always used to have like talk with the locals because they knew most about Gilbojing, and also called it Gilbojing instead. So I had to talk with them instead. And when I had to talk, they told me that this place wasn't actually as hot as it seems right now, long time back. So yeah, that actually like after that incident, it made me like maybe get inspired or something, made me like want to learn more about why is this place so hot or something. And that's how I got to learn about climate change, and that's how I got interested.
Thank you, Jardul, for your answer. I think we all are really inspired by our young boy here to do more than what we have been doing so far to advocate about climate change and in addressing the challenges posed by climate change. I would also like to ask Ms. Namge a question here, especially from a perspective of a young graduate and also our students. I think Namge also touched about this in her opening remark. Namge was working with civil service for a few years, and then she boldly resigned from that job, from that comfortable job, to take up her interests. And one of that interests is advocating for climate change and being engaged with youth in addressing climate change. So what message do we have to our young people there who have a lot of interest and passion, but at the same time they have to think about their stability, their career path? So what inspired you, and what message do you have to our young people here, especially to the students of JSW School of Law?
Well, it's funny because I hope my mom is not watching. It's just going to flare up all her anxieties, because ever since I left, she's like, you have no job. You haven't gone to grad school. You're useless. But anyway, so your question is, what inspired me to go on the path that I did?
Yep.
Okay, I'll break it down into two parts. I'll first talk about what drives me, and second, why I love the work that I currently do. I think the last 3 or so years since I started my real job have really been an opportunity for me to discover my values. I believe in ambition, I believe in collaboration, I believe in just going forward despite all the challenges that you have. So at a very personal level, when I entered my work in the civil service, I did so with an understanding of what the challenges and the limitations will be, and I always say that it was an absolute privilege for me to have been working with the government. Starting where I started, the level of access to information and people that I got helped me immensely to develop myself intellectually and professionally, and despite me not being part of the government anymore, I would highly encourage young people to consider this path. That being said, I still work with the government. I have been involved with the climate change negotiations, particularly assisting the lead negotiator on the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which is on carbon markets. So I'm going to tell you why I love what I do. For a country like Bhutan, when we go to these climate negotiations, we are part of the LDC group, the negotiating bloc that has been mentioned previously. And so when I say the following, I say this in the context of Bhutan, as well as Bhutan being part of the LDC group. There are a lot of challenges in terms of our own capacities to implement the agreements that we have agreed to be part of. Carbon markets are an opportunity that I personally believe we have not been able to take advantage of due to our institutional capacities that perhaps cannot manage the intricacy of these transactions. So I'm really passionate about taking that forward. I really want Bhutan to participate in high integrity carbon markets, although this is not the solution, the end all, the panacea to climate action, because this is only a very, very small part of it. And when I continue my work with the government, but also, coming here and talking to young people about what I do, I think that is something that inspires me and drives me every day. And I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Namgi, for your brilliant answer. I hope that our young people here would definitely pursue your interests and definitely not shy away from advocating for climate change if that's one of your interests. And my last question is to Ms. Diki. So Diki, in your opening remarks, you mentioned about the Be Kind program. So why is it important for our young people to really consider the local indigenous knowledge for climate change?
So you want me to address two things, Be Kind program and then...
Yep, if you could do it briefly, that would be best.
Just like what I mentioned earlier, Be Kind is an IDRC-funded research project under the Rana Center for Social Research and Development. Be Kind researches on themes such as climate change, sustainable organic agriculture, holistic food systems, well-being, gender transformative change, and natural resource management. Be Kind as a research program has engaged so many, not so many, but a good number of young Bhutanese people as a researcher. More so, it also funds young Bhutanese people to pursue higher studies like PhDs and MA, who are involved in studying climate change in Bhutan for their thesis outcome, and I'm also one of their funding recipients. Coming to the second question, why indigenous knowledge is important for young people, it is mainly because there are multiple ways of knowing. Like, SOB science is one way of knowing about climate change, but that's not the ultimate one because there's culture and religion on the other hand. While I'm careful enough not to romanticize it, but many indigenous communities evolved ways of living with the earth and non-humans in a reciprocal way. Hence, it is important to understand indigenous knowledge, their own local traditions and practices to explain and also tackle climate crisis in some way. And it is also especially really crucial for young people to learn, understand, and be aware of those local indigenous knowledge because at this point of time, they're at the peril of disappearance as they retreat to the knowledge of only the elderly people who might die soon. So, yeah.
Thank you, Diki, for shedding light on the Be Kind program and also for highlighting why it is important for the young people to be aware of the indigenous knowledge of climate change. So in the interest of time, we will now invite our audience to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. They are ready to answer your questions. So just raise your hand if you have any questions. So here, Mr. Eric has a question.
So this question is for all four of our panels today. It is how much, okay. Does it work? Yes. Question is, how much, if any, contact does each of you have with climate activists and young climate activists, especially outside of Bhutan? And what do you see as the role for Bhutanese climate activists, if any, on the wider stage, the global stage? Because we've been talking about COP and we've been talking about getting the word out, but honestly, I think everyone in the room is in agreement that not just that you're the future, because that's sort of a truism, right? But that there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of the best ideas are coming from the young right now. Thanks.
So who would want to answer this question? So maybe two of them can answer in the interest of time. So I think Denker can go first.
Okay. I'm trying to give signal there, so. Okay, thank you, Eric, for the question. For past 2 years, because I think people have seen me working on climate stories, they have invited me to be part of few conferences which took place mostly in Southeast Asian countries. And this year, I am part of this network called Climate Action Champion Network. It is the network comprising 5 countries, mostly the Asias. And what I've realized, I've been sharing this to my Bhutanese folks, saying like, when we come from Bhutan, it's mostly like 5 delegates or 10 delegates who gets to attend such a discourse. And one thing I noticed is how uneducated we are when it comes to climate studies, because like every time we attend such a setting, we feel very inferior because we don't know much about climate, right? And we are not literate. We are not that literate about climate studies. It could be pertaining, it could be because we have never gone to climate classes, or it could, there could be many reasons. However, when we are put in that setting, it's like we really don't get to share our voice. All we get to share is we come from a carbon negative country, which is loud, clear, which everybody knows. And in that sense, I feel like there's so much of room to groom Bhutanese young people by giving them more opportunities to attend more discourses, by giving us more opportunity by maybe Karuna Foundation to attend COP, not just handful of us, but also a bunch of young people to attend such discourses. And by attending such discourses, I feel like they'll come back with rich knowledge, then share to people and tell them like, this is what happens abroad at young delegates' discourses. Otherwise, as from my experience of attending such trainings and discourses, I feel like we still need to know more. So hence, I could be very talkative here, but when I attend international conferences, my mouth's like usually shut, because I fear like I might say something wrong. So I rather not speak anything rather than making mistake. But I would really like to, just like how she shared, maybe it's time to really create a alliance and give young people voice and opportunity to see world beyond and see the setting of the climate arena.
Jumping off of where whatever Jenker said, several things have been running through my mind. First, at the COPs, the negotiations used to be center stage, but now is absolutely overshadowed by the sideline events, where there are so many amazing activists from all over the world coming to share their messages and subvert and challenge world leaders on their inaction. Second thing, but within that space, I also think that there is a diversity of contexts within which these activists function. And it is going to be very different for Bhutan as well. There are activists from different parts of the world that literally put their lives on the line. Their governments are out there to completely trash the environment, or there is a long legacy of colonialism, which again complicates the whole dynamic. So in Bhutan, I think we have been protected from all that, and we do tend to remain quite naive. So that's why we go out and we keep saying, oh, we're a carbon negative country. And you know what we get? Good job. But so what? How are we supposed to do transition from that? So this is the reality of it. But my last point would be that with increasing conversation on loss and damage compensation, for example, I think there's a huge space for countries like Bhutan and for Bhutanese to have our voices be heard loud and clear. Because this is an issue of inequity, this is an issue of justice, and I hope to see more voices there in that space.
Yes, thank you, Denker and Namge, for answering the question. Any more questions, ma'am?
Yeah, just from our side, I'm from EC Mode, as you all know, and thanks, Denker, for mentioning that. So we did, last year what we did for the COP preparation is that we mobilized youth and we worked with them closely on identifying the issues in different parts of our member countries. One was, of course, was shot by Denker. And then we also identified some young, trekkers and bloggers and influencers. So the point I'm trying to make here is that from ECMO's perspective, one is activism, but one is advocacy. We would like more young and youth engaged in more advocating mountain voices, because activism has its own limits, and it sometimes is great, but sometimes, like you said, you just keep your mouth shut for some reasons, and which you need to be politically correct or not. So how we can make it jointly an amplified voice, a unified voice, not actually taking away the cause we are there. One is that going there, do something, get it on social media. But because then it will dilute the purpose. For example, for EC Mode, the purpose is mountain voices needs to be heard, needs to be reflected, needs to be in the negotiations, not just a kind of a side event or something. Just on that, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And a question here.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Suresh Nanwani from Durham University in UK. I listened with fascination the different voices, and I hear certain aspects like naive or not having enough education, and then I heard about loss and damage. That's in contrast to being naive and not having enough education. Obviously, there's a lot that is made aware that you know of. So, and Bhutan being negative in terms of the emissions, and what is that to flaunt, and we get a pat on the back. But a lot of reactions I'm hearing, what is your common platform that you want to establish, rather than saying, we get a pat on the back? What do you really want? I mean, I hear from Deep Shikha that, you want your voice to be heard, and I think I heard that from you as well, right? What is it that you want to be heard? Mountain voices, your voices, the youth? I think you have a lot to offer. I want to encourage you on that. The activists, I think there's someone who's actually said, what have we said that has not been heard enough? Right. You're not alone. Don't feel that you're alone. You're not. If anything, galvanize what you have and come out of that shell, as it were, because you can actually have a sub-regional grouping, if not more. And I want to leave on this final note. You're the youth of today, and that's the leaders for tomorrow. Thank you.
If I just may add on that, thank you so much for your comments. I think it's very enlightening for me personally, because when I speak, I feel that I speak from an intersection of different identities. Having worked in the policy space where I am cognizant of the frustrations, but at the same time of the pressures to wield Bhutan's soft power as an environmental champion, but also as a young people, where I see a lot of hope, a lot of possibilities, but at the same time, a lot of limitations and challenges. So I'm very grateful that you bring up these contradictions that really have me to think more about.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you have contradictions or so-called contradictions, that's not a problem.
Right.
In fact, put them on a list.
Right.
The do list, the don't list, weak list, strong list, and build up on that list, because from that list you can actually build up and actually see signs that there are some very positive things that you have, that you can be heard more. So I want to actually impart with you that it's a great kick-off point that you're airing it, and actually I take the opportunity to thank you for sharing your views with the audience at large, because it's a baby step, but a baby step is always the first step to something grander.
Thank you, La. In the interest of time, we'll take one final question from the audience, La, because we are asked to wrap up the session. So if you have one last question from the audience, please raise your hand. Maybe one from the students, the panelist is asking. So if any of our students have any questions. I think we don't have any more questions, so thank you everyone for engaging with us. And what? I think they're really excited. Yeah. As a final activity, I think our volunteers have already distributed the pledge cards. So that pledge card, I think Namge has already talked about it. It's the Bhutan Youth Declaration pledge cards. So we would like to invite our audience to write your pledges. It could be as simple as committing to use public transportation to when you commute to your work, or maybe replacing plastic straws with metal straws. It could be your pledge. So you can write your pledges on the card. We will collect it, and then we are going to take those pledges to the UNRCO's office. There we have a time capsule. So we are going to put your pledges into that box. So please write your pledges and put in that box. So we have a box circulating. So with this, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for giving us your experiences, providing insightful lessons to us. And at the end, I would like to add that it is only through a collective action and with the active participation of young people that we can ensure a sustainable and equitable future for us and for our younger generations to come. With this, thank you and Tashitelela.